Book First, Part 2 of the Joyful Wisdom. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Joyful Wisdom by Friedrich Nietzsche. Translated by Thomas Common. 22. L'ordre du jour pour le roi. The day commences. Let us begin to arrange for this day the business and fates of our most gracious Lord, who at present is still pleased to repose. His Majesty has bad weather to-day. We shall be careful not to call it bad. We shall not speak of the weather. But we shall go through to-day's business somewhat more ceremoniously, and make the fates somewhat more festive than would otherwise be necessary. His Majesty may perhaps even be sick. We shall give the last good news of the evening at breakfast, the arrival of M. Montaigne, who knows how to joke so pleasantly about his sickness. He suffers from stone. We shall receive several persons. Persons! What would that old inflated frog, who will be among them, say if he heard this word? "I am no person," he would say, "but always the thing itself," and the reception will last longer than is pleasant to anybody, and sufficient reason for telling about the poet who wrote over the door, "He who enters here will do me an honour, he who does not, a favour," That is, forsooth, saying a discourteous thing in a courteous manner. And perhaps this poet is quite justified on this part in being discourteous. They say that the rhymes are better than the rhymester. Well, let him still make many of them, and withdraw himself as much as possible from the world. That is doubtless the significance of his well-bred rudeness. A prince, on the other hand, is always more value than his "verse," even when—but what are we about? We gossip, and the whole court believes that we have already been at work, and racked our brains. There is no light to be seen earlier than that which burns in our window. Hark! Was that not the bell? The devil! The day and the dance commence, and we do not know our rounds. We must then improvise. All the world improvises its day. To-day, let us for once do like all the world, and therewith vanish my wonderful morning dream, probably owing to the violent strokes of the tower clock, which just then announced the 5th hour with all the importance which is peculiar to it. It seems to me that on this occasion the god of dreams wanted to make merry over my habits. It is my habit to commence the day by arranging it properly, to make it endurable for myself, and it is possible that I may often have done this too formally, and too much like a prince. 23. The characteristics of corruption. Let us observe the following characteristics in that condition of society from time to time necessarily, which is designated by the word "corruption." Immediately upon the appearance of corruption anywhere, a motley superstition gets the upper hand, and the hitherto universal belief of a people becomes colourless and impotent in comparison with it. For superstition is free thinking of the second rank. He who gives himself over to it selects certain forms and formulae which appeal to him, and permits himself a right of choice. The superstitious man is always much more of a "person" in comparison with the religious man, and a superstitious society will be one in which there are many individuals and a delight in individuality. Seen from this standpoint, superstition always appears as a progress in comparison with belief, and a sign that the intellect becomes more independent and claims to have its rights. Those who reverence the old religion and the religious disposition then complain of corruption. They have hitherto also determined the usage of language, and have given a bad repute to superstition, even among the freest spirits. Let us learn that it is a symptom of enlightenment. Secondly, a society in which corruption takes a hold is blamed for effeminacy, for the appreciation of war and the delight in war perceptibly diminish in such a society, and the conveniences of life are now just as eagerly sought after as were military or gymnastic honours formerly. But one is accustomed to overlook the fact that the old national energy and national passion, which acquired a magnificent splendour in war and in the tourney, has now transferred itself into innumerable private passions, and has merely become less visible. Indeed, in periods of "corruption," the quantity and quality of the expended energy of a people is probably greater than ever, and the individual spends it lavishly, to such an extent as could not be done formerly. He was not then rich enough to do so. And thus it is precisely in terms of "effeminacy" that tragedy runs at large in and out of doors. It is then that ardent love and ardent hatred are born, and the flames of knowledge flash heavenwards in full blaze. Thirdly, as if in amends for the reproach of superstition and effeminacy, it is customary to say of such periods of corruption that they are milder, and that cruelty has greatly diminished in comparison with the older and more credulous and stronger period. But to this praise I am just as little able to assent as to that reproach. I only grant so much, namely, that cruelty now becomes more refined, and its older forms are henceforth counted to the taste. But the wounding and torturing by word and look reaches its highest development in times of corruption. It is now only that wickedness is created, and the delight in wickedness. The men of the period of corruption are witty and calumnious. They know that there are other ways of murdering than by the dagger and the ambush. They know also that all that is well said is believed in. Fourthly, it is when "morals decay" that those beings who one call tyrants first make their appearance. They are the forerunners of the individual, and as it were early matured firstlings. Yet a little while, and this fruit of fruits hang ripe and yellow on the tree of a people, and only for the sake of such fruit did this tree exist. When the decay has reached its worst, and likewise the conflict of all sorts of tyrants, there always arises the Caesar, the final tyrant, who puts an end to the exhausted struggle for sovereignty by making the exhaustedness work for him. In his time the individual is usually most mature, and consequently the "culture" is highest and most fruitful, but not on his account, nor through him. Although the men of highest culture love to flatter their Caesar by pretending that they are his creation. The truth, however, is that they need quietness externally, because internally they have disquietude and labour. In these times bribery and treason are at their height, for the love of the ego, then first discovered, is much more powerful than the love of the old, used-up, hackneyed "fatherland," and the need to be secure in one way or other against the frightful fluctuations of fortune opens even the nobler hands. As soon as the richer and more powerful person shows himself ready to put gold into them, there is then so little certainty with regard to the